Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fourmation Podcast. Yes, we are back again this week. This week it is episode number 15. Feels like we've rattled through these now. We're getting towards the end of this kind of series. I know we haven't called it a series, but this is going to be series 1. I think we're going to do one more episode next week. I wasn't here last week, but thank you very much to Josh Goodman for stepping in for us. I really enjoyed watching it back, actually, guys. It was very different to see, but again, a really good watch. Maybe that's easy for me to say because I'm part of the podcast, so I'm obviously like that. But I did enjoy watching it. So if you missed that one, then go back and watch it. But also, this is sure to be a good one too. You can probably notice now that Devon isn't here this week, but in his place we have Jack Johnson, a friend of ours from university. Jack, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Devon can't make it due to Wi-Fi problems in Sheffield, but maybe a coincidence that in the same week that Sheffield Wednesday had their points deduction that he doesn't show his face. Maybe he's worried ahead of next season. But no, we've got a lot to discuss next week. JJ is a Leicester fan, so we're going to go over what went wrong for Leicester City in a bit. Obviously, at the end of the Premier League season, they ended up finishing 5th in the Europa League when they could have had Champions League. We'll get onto that. A bit of news earlier this week was Eddie Howe leaving Bournemouth, so we'll talk about what's coming up for them next. I should mention, actually, I didn't say Harry and Sam are, of course, here as well. If you're not watching, you're listening, then they are both here as well. But yeah, Eddie Howe, Leicester. We've had a question sent in from a viewer as well, which we'll discuss. But first of all, we're going to talk about the Championship playoff final, the richest game in football, which took place earlier this week between Brentford and Fulham. Fulham were, of course, 2-1 winners in extra time. So they are going back to the Premier League at the first attempt after their relegation last year. So straight into it. Harry, I'll start with you. The bookmakers had Brentford as pretty clear favourites pre-match. Were you surprised that Fulham managed it in the end?
Both the teams are in the top 6 for a reason. They both had, very, very good seasons, and both of them on the last day of the season could have got promotion if they just won the game that they had. So they're both clearly quite, very good sides. And I thought Brentford, after their playoff victory against Swansea, would have been, their confidence would have been back. But it sort of seemed for the first 80 minutes that neither team wanted to do that extra mile to lose the game, and it was very tense for that amount of time. And it was just not a bit of luck because he planned it, did Joe Bryan, for the free kick, but it was that one bit of skill that caught David Raya out that sort of made the difference and really separated the two sides. So to answer your question, I'm not surprised, to be fair, because they're both very good sides that I think would have done well in the Premier League next season.
So Scott Parker has obviously had a lot of praise because Fulham showed a lot of mettle in the playoffs, first of all, to get through the 2 legs, like you said, Harry, and then to win the final. Do you think it's an impressive job done by him, or should promotion, I've seen a few suggestions of this, should it have been expected due to the experience in their squad? Sam, do you want to answer that one?
I don't know about that. I think Fulham have been written off a lot this season, and that's mainly down to obviously that one season they had in the Premier League where they lost 26 games and conceded 81 goals. So I think, hats off to Scott Parker for the job that he's done to turn, he talked about it after the game, the psychological battle that his squad had with a lot of the players that were in that team that won the playoff final were in the Premier League, Joe Bryan included. Obviously, he was the hero of the game. He talked about that psychological battle that his squad has had to, get their confidence back after such a poor season, and to keep out that forward line of Brentford, which you could say is Premier League quality, that front three, 59 goals between them to keep them out of the way they did. A good job by Scott Parker and his team.
Yeah, and you mentioned Joe Bryan. with 2 goals. We should say, if you didn't watch it, it was pretty dire in normal time, to be honest. Very cagey, but maybe that's to be expected for a playoff final. No one wants to make a mistake. But the first goal was a Joe Bryan free kick from a long way out, it has to be said. It appeared that everyone expected him to swing it in for someone to head it. Instead, he went for the near post and sneaked it in. JJ, the question I'm going to ask is, do you think this was brilliant from Bryan, or was it disaster for Raya?
I think it was more on the side of disaster, to be honest, because he seems to just be way too far off his line. He's more towards the middle of the box, but he was way too preemptive of the cross. He's got to be a lot more towards his goal line, and Bryan's obviously sees that opportunity, saw that gap, and obviously even from that distance, there was that much of a gap that he could find the back of the net.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was quite funny to see as well. As soon as the ball landed in the net, then
the way
they decided to dive, which was
the way that it bounced halfway on its way to the goal as well, made it look worse for the keeper as well, because it wasn't.
The reaction time was so slow.
Yeah, wasn't a huge amount of pace on the ball.
But no, it was interesting to see at the end when Parker said that they'd thought about it already, and it was a really good interview with Parker, actually, who obviously he wasn't in charge for a long period of time last year. I think the damage was done under Jokanovic and Ranieri. They were relegated. Parker was there. Do you think that maybe as they're going back up, that experience could serve them well maybe next year as they fight for survival? Because there's a chance to kind of learn from their mistakes and where they went wrong last year, that they'll maybe have more know-how this time around.
Definitely. And it seems like Scott Parker is really connected with this squad, like I said, like seeing how emotional he was after the game. So I think that experience that they've had, knowing that you have to invest when you go up to the Premier League, but you've got to invest wisely. And I think they've got the building blocks there. I think they need more creativity in the final third, as well as someone to back up Mitrovic goals-wise, because he was the only player in the team that got into double figures this season. So I think the improvements are obvious, but they know now, Scott Parker knows better than anyone, that you can't just splash the cash anywhere. You need to invest smartly.
And Harry, I saw some reports yesterday. We were discussing this before the final was decided on Harrison Reed, because he played for Norwich, of course, and I wouldn't mind having him back. But I think after Fulham have just gone up, Southampton are, I think the sale to Fulham is going to go through. Do you think that makes sense? I think you were saying you think he deserves a chance at the Premier League.
Oh yeah, he's been a part of a lot of successful championship campaigns, and this is obviously the pinnacle. He's got Premier League experience with Southampton, and even when he was younger, 22, 23, and he made first team appearances for us, I thought it was really impressive. He's a great ball winning midfielder. He's energetic in the midfield, and at £8 million, it's what Sam said in the part of they should start making sensible transfers, and I think they've realised that instead of spending 25 million on John Mikel Seri, instead now they'll bring Harrison Reed in, someone that they know works well both with the squads but also in the system, and I think that could really help them to try and stay up.
I think having had Sheffield United this season going up and doing really well, they have that template. That's what they need to do. They need to keep their core. They need to trust the players that he's trusted this season, like his captain Tom Cairney, who I think should probably move further forward next season. I think he's a really good creative attacking player. So I think they need to trust. They need to make improvements, like I said, like Harry said, but they need to also trust in the players that have got them there.
So we're now in the early stages of the transfer window. We don't know who they're going to bring in. But if I had to push you all for a prediction, starting with JJ, do you think they will avoid relegation, or could they come straight back down?
I have a feeling that they may come back down. However, they've mentioned the stuff that Sam and Harry have said. They may actually learn from their past relegation. So it's kind of a bit on a knife edge, really. It depends how much they learn from their last season in the Prem.
Sam, what are you thinking?
It's tough. It's tough. I think they'll do better than they did that other season, but it's not that difficult to do better than they did then. But it is tough. I think they might just edge it, take 17th.
Harry?
Yeah, I'm on that sort of cliff edge as well. There's certainly teams that are going to be not worse than them in the Premier League, but I think they'll come 18th. I think they might just go down.
I was thinking about what I was going to say there, but it is a tough one. I quite fancied him to do it because I really like Mitrovic, and I think, like you say, it'll be important the players they bring in, but I'd quite
they need someone to back him up, really, because you can't expect him to bag 26 in the Premier League.
We can't move on without mentioning a team who came away from Wembley gutted. They've been up there all season, as Fulham have. Brentford back in the Championship again for next season. They must have thought this was their year, but how worried should they be ahead of next season, JJ, with so many assets who could depart?
They're going to be really, really worried. I can see a bit of an exodus going on, to be honest, because all over the field they've got players that have impressed and stood out, especially obviously the front three, but then you've also got the midfield pairing, got the wing backs, they've impressed. So I think we could see a lot of players leaving, which I don't know where that's going to leave them. It'll be a bit of a task for Thomas Frank to try and recover from those players leaving.
They do kind of have a history with their recruitment of doing pretty well. You know, they lost Maupay last year, who was up there in the top goal scorer list, and they don't appear to have missed him. So do you think that will give them maybe a bit of optimism? I'm sure they're not feeling it now, but maybe a little bit as the summer progresses.
Yeah, they did pretty well at replacing him. It's just if more players go, it's like, because they've relied heavily on that front three scoring their goals. At least two out of that three are looking likely to leave, especially with Ollie Watkins. He's got an 18 million release clause that can be activated now. So without those two, it could be quite devastating for them.
And we can't have you on without mentioning Ben Rama, JJ. He's been linked with several top half Premier League clubs, including Leicester City. How keen are you on the idea of him turning out at the King Power?
Very keen. By the looks of his Twitter.
I'd love to have him. Hashtag announce Ben Rama.
But I will ask Harry and Sam, if he wasn't to go to Leicester, do you think there's maybe another club who he might be more suited to? Where do you think? I know Chelsea have been another one which have been heavily linked.
Chelsea don't need him.
No, they've got a lot. I think anyone would take 17 goals and 9 assists. I know it's the Championship, and from personal experience, Championship quality does take quite a long time to settle in. But he's a good player. But I do think Leicester's the perfect option. He can not only play across that front line, but he's really good on the wing, and that's probably what we'll talk about Leicester later. And I'm not an expert on them, but one of their main weaknesses is getting goals and assists from the wing, and I think he provides that exact threat.
Maybe Everton. I mean, we talked about them last week. They're filling in their troubles on the wing, so maybe he could fill in there as part of a front three, filling in alongside Richarlison and maybe Alex Iwobi.
You'd have to expect Everton to have a big pull factor given Ancelotti. Who wouldn't want to work with someone like him? I know that's a cliche because everyone says it about Guardiola, and a lot has been said as well about Jamal Lewis. We won't get too much on that, but Liverpool thinking of bringing him in as a backup. Yeah. Realistically, I kind of think, does he want to play as a backup after playing for 2.5 years consistently for Norwich? I don't know. But then again, on the other hand, Liverpool, you're going to win trophies, and I don't know. I don't know
and the pay packet as well is probably quite nice. A bit higher.
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, we won't delve too deep on that now. Congratulations to Fulham, and good luck next season. I don't know why I'm saying congratulations. They're not watching.
Fulham as a whole.
So we will now move on to Leicester City. We mentioned a little bit about this during the season when it all appeared to be a bit bleak. I know Leicester took it to the final day, but everyone kind of expected it given their post-lockdown form, I'm going to say. They, of course, ended up finishing 5th. They won just 2 of their 9 games post-lockdown. JJ, you've had a week and a half or so to digest it. Do you think there's a particular person or something to blame for the Foxes' collapse in the second half of the season?
I think it was just like a lack of fight and like mentality from our players, really. We've got a young team that aren't really experienced being at the top, and we had those important games after the restart. We had the Bournemouth game. I don't want to talk about that. And then even in the last few games, we had the tough games. We just didn't turn up. It was just a case of not showing that fight and pushing for a goal when we needed to. We were too busy passing it around. It seemed just a bit lackadaisical and stuff, and we just struggled to get going, really.
Do you think the second? I know you said you didn't want to talk about it, but the second half at Bournemouth when Rodgers made the Iheanacho switch when it all seemed to be fairly plain sailing, and then it all went wrong. Do you think from that point the doubts just started creeping in, and everyone thought it's maybe not our year?
Yeah, exactly that. Because first half, before that game as well, we were doing okay, and then first half, perfect. Bournemouth weren't threatening, and then we take off a striker for a midfielder to plug a gap that clearly wasn't being exploited because we had like 80% possession. So it was such a weird change, and then we just absolutely capitulated, and it kind of just sums up our season as a whole, really. Good first half, and then just complete lack of fight in the second half, and we just collapsed. And I think since that game, the players got really hit by it, and we seem to be a bit more cautious in the remaining games, and that harmed us, really.
Harry, do you think Leicester overachieved to get themselves into that position in the first place? We saw how good they were in the first half of the season. You saw it especially. I know that always gets mentioned, the 9-0. But yeah, do you think it was down to overachievement?
Yeah, sort of what Jay just said. I think they just sort of ran out of energy. I think if after the 4-0 win against Aston Villa, if the season continued from there, I think there's a good chance they could have got top 4. Because in January, I was still a bit suspect about Leicester. I was thinking they might slip up. But after I saw that 4-0 win, I was like, do you know what? Yes, they're going to push on for the rest of the season. But did they overachieve? Compared to a lot of squads in the Premier League, yes. I think they did overachieve, just if you're going player by player, but they deserve to be where they were up until that point. And then obviously the sort of collapse happened, and they finished 5th place. But will they compete next season if they invest correctly? I think they certainly could.
Jamie Vardy is 33 now, and he of course won the Golden Boot for the first time. For how many more years, Sam, do you think he can play at the top level, or at the level that he's been showing for the last few seasons?
It's really tough for them, because I think for the last couple of years people have been writing him off, but he just seems to keep responding every year. As long as he gets those Red Bulls in every game, then he should be all right. But I think maybe 1 or 2 more years, and then if Leicester do have to start considering other options, maybe someone like Eddie Howe from Leicester. I think he's a very good option for them. He's a proven goal scorer. So I think, maybe 1 or 2 years.
And JJ, you will obviously probably know more than any of us all the strikers that have been linked, and we've seen Francisco Trincao. I'm guessing that pronunciation works okay. He's the man who's been linked. Do you think, and Sam mentioned Edouard too, do you think even with all this speculation that Vardy will be the main man, but they're just wanting to challenge him a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a weird one, because I think for the past couple of years we've expected a bit of a dip, and we were worried about how we haven't got any backup for Vardy. But then he's obviously excelled again this season, he's done better than ever. So it's like, it's a weird situation to be in, knowing he's towards the end of his career, but we can't really leave him out. It's a weird one. So he's obviously going to be, I think he'll be starting again next season, every game. But there's talk of us selling the Iheanacho as well, which I don't agree with, because he's been one of our better players this season, in my opinion. And I'd definitely take Edouard, but I wouldn't sell Iheanacho as well. I think we need multiple players in for competition. Same with wide players, really. It's just about competition.
Do you think Iheanacho would be satisfied with maybe being the third choice striker? Do you think that's why he's being linked away?
Yeah, I feel like he wouldn't be willing to do that. I think he gets frustrated now having to be on the bench, and the thing is, he can't really complain because Vardy he's the main man. He's literally Leicester. He's the description of Leicester. So he can't really complain about being left out for Jamie Vardy. So if he was to be another striker brought in, it would seem like that would be the end of his Leicester career, really, which would be quite harsh on him.
And Ben Rama as well is a player who Harry mentioned his strength out wide, but I think he can even play kind of as a centre forward. I'm thinking of like the role on FIFA when they're not quite a
shadow.
They're not
a shadow striker.
Attacking, yeah, a shadow striker.
An enganche, a trequartista.
So do you think his versatility is something which attracts him to Leicester?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think we need multiple players like him, because we saw at the end of the season we got hit hard by injuries, and Maddison was one of them, and we lost so much creativity through that. So just to have a few extra players out wide, because we had to play Jose Perez central, which I think he's better there. But then that means we'll let one less player out wide. So just having that bit of depth out wide and in the middle, bit more creativity, which is what Ben Rama can bring, as well as Trincao as well. So I think just getting a bit of extra depth out wide should be that extra bit of push we need to maybe break into that top four.
With your current squad, what do you think your best system is? Obviously, because you used the 4-1-4-1 the most, but you also tried 4-3-3 and also 3 at the back. Obviously, that was enforced a little bit by suspensions and injuries.
Yeah.
But what do you think with your current squad is your best system?
With the current squad, it's got to be the 4-1-4-1. That's like the tried and tested that we've had. That's what worked for us in the first half of the season, and it helps with the proper balanced midfield. Like I'd say we've probably got one of the most balanced midfield when everyone's fit. One of the most balanced midfields in the league, with Tielemans as a 8 and then Maddison as a 10, and they can also switch roles. And then you've got Ndidi, who's one of the best defensive midfielders. So I think that midfield has to stay. And with the current squad, well, we'd have to keep it like that. But it depends on recruitment for the future. I could see that changing, but with the current squad, definitely the 4-1-4-1.
And you briefly mentioned Maddison there. He's hoping that he calms down after his trip to Ibiza and he comes home.
Celebrating a new contract.
We won't discuss that too much because it's not what people want to see. If you want to see it, then just type his name in on Twitter and there you have it.
There you go.
So just to kind of round the Leicester segment off, Harry mentioned he thinks they can compete for Europe again next year. Sam and JJ, what are you thinking? Are you thinking they'll be in that mix again?
I think so. I mean, it's not. Obviously, they've had this collapse in the second half, but it's really not all been all doom and gloom for Leicester, let's be honest. I mean, they've scored considerably more than they did last season, 67 compared to 51, conceded 7 fewer. So I think there's a lot of signs of improvement there. I think, Rodgers, this will be another good learning curve for him as a manager, because it's not the first time that his team has collapsed, obviously, with Liverpool back in the 13-14 season. So it'll be a good learning curve for him and some of the young players in that Leicester squad that are still learning. Clearly have a lot of talent, but are still learning. So I think they'll definitely still be up there next season for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Really, with the current squad, I think we would do pretty well if we recruit well. My confidence would definitely rise for that top four. The only doubt is we have got Europa League as well. So if we don't recruit well, get a bit more depth in the positions that we need it, then it could get a bit worrying with those extra games that will take a toll. Because when we were in the Champions League a few years ago, we were looking for relegation during that season. I mean, it wasn't the best managed team at that time, but we're just hoping we don't have a repeat of that season and we can keep it up despite having European games.
Do you think because of how poor the results have been behind closed doors post-lockdown, do you think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Rodgers to kind of hit the ground running with results from the start of next year?
Yeah, I'd say so. Because if we were to carry on like we were post-lockdown, I think we need to get that confidence back up. Mm-hmm. If we were to come back into the first couple of games and lose or take a heavy loss, it's just going to make it much worse. So just to bounce back, get back to that form that we were on before lockdown, then I think we will start flying again like we did at the start of last season.
I think Wolves have shown that you can balance the two, the Europa League and the Premier League, and their squad is quite notably very small.
They're a very thin squad.
Nuno doesn't use a lot of players, so I think it can be done with the right players.
And one of the defining points of Leicester's season was from their 2 games against Norwich. They managed only 1 point, and a team who also only managed 1 point from their 2 games against Norwich was Bournemouth. And
what a transition!
That's an obscure link.
There we go.
As a result, they suffered relegation. Well, not as a result. I'm not saying that was why they went down.
Because of Norwich,
they went down. Sort of game that you need to get a result from. I know that on last week's episode, you guys discussed what next for them. Well, in the last week, this has developed significantly.
They have reinvested in their manager, Harry.
Yeah, Harry, how surprised were you when you heard of Eddie Howe's departure?
I think they did need a change. I think you can have a good manager and an okay squad, and they work together for so many years. But when you're pushing the same message for what was it, 8 years? I know, and the players haven't really changed that much. There's been a lot of players they've had since the League One days. There's nothing wrong with that because they've done well up until this point. But yeah, I wasn't too surprised. But it's interesting to see that, like you said, we were chatting off air about Tyndall coming in. I think it's ridiculous because it'll be like they've got rid of that guy, they've got Tyndall in, and then they go, right, let's just do the same again, lads. Let's do the same again, and they need a new message.
It's just Howe 2.0, isn't it?
Yeah,
maybe a little bit worse. I mean, no disrespect to the man, but
do you agree? Do you agree with Harry on the timing was probably about right?
I think it was probably gonna be now. Seeing as though they've gone down, and I don't think Eddie Howe, with how far he's taken them, will want to go through that again. I think when he does eventually return to management, he'll be looking at the top division for his next job. But I think the warning signs for Bournemouth have been there for a while, especially defensively. I mean, in the 18-19 season, they conceded 70 goals, which even Cardiff, who got relegated, conceded less. So I think over these last couple of seasons, the warning signs have been there for Bournemouth that something needs to change. And with the big money signings that they made this season, Jordan Ibe, Dominic Solanke, who didn't work out. Solanke only scored 3 in 32 games, and Ibe only started. Yeah. And Ibe only started 2 league games. So I think if Eddie Howe is going to walk out any time, now would be the right time.
And you mentioned the defensive struggles they've had. These notes that I've got on Bournemouth were made yesterday before I saw the Athletic reporting this morning that Tyndall is likely to be appointed. And there's names such as Chris Hughton, John Terry, who you would think would come in and kind of shore it up defensively before launching a bid to get back to the Premier League. So, as Harry mentioned, the Tyndall thing isn't really a change. So that is surely a surprise, isn't it, JJ, that they're sticking with someone who's been there for so long and been there through these times of struggle?
Yeah, I think it's worrying if you're a Bournemouth fan, because if they're going to appoint Tyndall, they might as well have just kept Howe. And Bournemouth fans were fuming that they'd sold. Well, not fuming, but they weren't happy to see Howe go. And now they're getting Tyndall in. It's like it's not gone from Howe to huge, like the examples you just said. So, like Harry was saying, it's just basically the same system and the same type of style of football they're going to play. So it's worrying for the future for them if they'll be able to get back up and try and build a bit more momentum.
I do worry about them. I mean, they've got better financial backing now with that Russian owner, but I think that they've already lost Ake to Man City. They're going to lose Joshua King and Callum Wilson, who are their main guys. So I do worry about them, what they'll be able to do next season.
Do you think? I know a lot is made of the behind closed doors nature as well, but without the fans at the Vitality, they struggled a bit post lockdown. Do you think that will worry them again as they restart the next season? Because we know it's not going to be until at least October when some fans are allowed back in.
Probably. I mean, they have the smallest backing. They have the smallest backing in the Premier League, but the fans do always make the difference. So I think without them to start the new season with a weaker squad, it will be tough for them.
I think for a team trying to bounce back as well, coming back off a relegation, want a bit of atmosphere, a bit of something to pump them up to try and get that promotion again and start off on the right foot. Mm-hmm. That's what they would need. But without that, it would end up being a bit of a spiral.
And if we just talk quickly about Eddie Howe as well and what might come for him next. Something many people forget is how he went away to Burnley after his first spell at Bournemouth. He went there. It was unsuccessful between 2011 and 2012. Do you think that experience he had at another club when it didn't go so well will mean he might take a bit more time now to find the right job for him rather than rush into it?
I think he was planning a break after all this time. Obviously, he's managed Bournemouth for more than a decade over those two spells, over 450 games. So I think he was planning a break anyway. But a lot of jobs have come and gone while he's been at Bournemouth, and some people have accused him of potentially staying in his comfort zone at Bournemouth, staying at what is his club basically with what he's done with them, and not taking that leap. So I think he will, obviously that spell at Burnley, like you mentioned, that didn't go well, might weigh on his mind when he's considering going into a new job.
And there's been speculation before when Bournemouth were doing better than they did last year in the Prem when they were loitering in mid-table. I can remember links with the Arsenal job, the Tottenham job. Do you think, given the relegation, they maybe won't be too keen on that idea anymore, or do you think his stock is still fairly high? Harry, what are your thoughts on that?
Although he was linked to those sort of jobs, I don't think he would have ever got to those level of jobs, to be honest. I think maybe he's got one stepping stone again before he gets there. Once again, I think next season, whether he goes back into management or not, I've seen Palace and West Ham linked to them, and I think that's the right level teams that like investing money into the squad, especially because both teams do have assets that they're probably going to move on. I think that sort of team is right for him to show that he can do it somewhere else as well, because we've not seen him do well anywhere else apart from Bournemouth. So he needs to show that he can do well at a different club in a completely different location. And once he's done that, then he can go, right, here's my CV to the top 6 clubs. This is what I can do.
It is strange how quickly things change in football. Time moves on, because he was the pick for the next England manager during the time where we were still, before Gareth Southgate, really, when he was doing well with Bournemouth, and now with this relegation on his CV, it is going to be a lot harder for him. But he's still got a lot going for him, obviously.
We should say as well, we mentioned a lot about Jason Tyndall there. It's not confirmed as of yet that he's the manager, but The Athletic don't tend to go live with a story unless they're pretty sure of it, and that is what they have done this morning that we're recording. So he is set to take them into the Championship next year. So we're going to move on now to a question sent in by a viewer. And this is the first time we've had one of these. It's a first time.
Exciting moment.
It's a landmark episode. And it has been sent in by Ollie Cotton, a friend of mine who I went to high school with. So, Ollie, thank you for sending this question in. I know he's an avid viewer and I know you'll be watching. So thank you for sending it in. And we're going to have a good discussion about it now. And his question is, out of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Mikel Arteta and Frank Lampard, so the theme being managers who all played for their clubs, who do you think has done the best job so far? And I'll come to Harry first of all. We can obviously discuss this deeper, so feel free to say what you like.
I think out of the three, probably I'd say Frank Lampard. I think the expectation of him when he came in was very minimal due to the fact that, I think I said last week, the fact of he's had, 15 years before that, they've always had managers that can go, right, I've come in and now I can splash the cash. And I think he's the first in the sort of Abramovich era that can't do that. He's brought in the young players that he had at Derby and obviously other places as well. And instead of just getting, top 6, top 7, what people expected, he was able to get into the top 4 without spending a penny. And now he's buying wisely for the next season as well. So to answer your question in short, I'd probably say that if it was my choice, I'd say Lampard's done the best job.
Just to go back to you, Harry, do you think that sort of works against him as well in this debate? Because they had the transfer ban, maybe a little less pressure was put on him by the Chelsea faithful. So compared to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, do you think maybe that goes against him?
Thing is, for me, that I'm sort of trying to base it from this start of the season, and Solskjaer had lots of money to spend. I know the expectation at Manchester United is always quite high. And I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer he did his job. And I know that sounds harsh because obviously Man United have not struggled in recent years, but have had an indifferent period since Sir Alex Ferguson. But Solskjaer, who was sort of written off by some Manchester United fans, was able to get them top 4 with that money. And Frank Lampard, who hadn't got much expectation by the Chelsea fans or by the general league, just in general, really, was able to get top 4 as well.
On Arteta, we know that he inherited an Arsenal team who were pretty down in the dumps after a really poor start under Emery. But I know their league finish of 8th is their lowest in, over 20 years or something like that, maybe longer.
Yeah.
But they still won the FA Cup against Chelsea last week with a pretty good performance in the final, and they've produced some pretty big scalps in the league as well recently, as well as in the cup against Man City. So there's got to be a fairly good mood in the Arsenal camp at the moment, don't you think?
Yeah, it might be a little bit unfair to throw him into this debate with Lampard and Solskjaer because he's not had as much time, obviously, but there has to, like you say, there has to be some good feeling amongst the Arsenal players now that they've got that trophy under their belt. And I think Arteta's done a pretty decent job. It's not an easy one, that's for certain. I think they've still got a lot of issues there, a lot of players that they need to get rid of. And Arteta has put his foot down when he's needed to with the Guendouzi situation, like we've already mentioned, and Ozil as well, who's pretty much been frozen out at the club now. So I think, and he's got his style. He's implemented that 3-4-3 formation. That seems to be working quite well with that front three of Aubameyang, Lacazette, and either Pepe or Saka. He's got some good young players there to build around, and it looks pretty good. Like I said, a lot of issues still to be sorted. I'm looking at the defence especially, but he has done a decent job so far.
Often you'll see pundits and people around football referring to the number of transfer windows a manager might need in order to be able to challenge. And for Arsenal, it's obviously to be able to challenge for the top 4 again. JJ, how many, if you had to put a number on it, would you guess that Arsenal probably need to improve areas of their squad?
I'd say maybe a couple more transfer windows, because if they can keep, it depends on who they keep, really. If they keep that front three, keep Aubameyang, keep Lacazette, keep those key players, then it will be the defence, like Sam said, centre backs, just those key positions. They could even do it in one if they were to keep the right players and recruit well. But I'd say 2 is more realistic, and I think Arsenal could become like a force again under Arteta, because he's impressed so much, and he's obviously got that teaching from Guardiola. He's still got that style, and to work that style into Arsenal with the players they've got now, with the kind of situation the club was in, I think it's really impressive. So now he can kind of put his own spin on it, make his own transfers. I think they're going to be quite dangerous.
They were in unique circumstances, but I think that win against Liverpool, that win against Man City in the FA Cup will be big for that squad, because that's what's been going against Arsenal in the recent future, is they haven't been able to cut it in those games against their closest rivals. So I think if they're to break back into that top six, which you could argue they've fallen out of in the last couple of seasons, then they need to be able to compete in those games where they're not fancied.
I think you make a good point. I think if they can build around that front three, they've got a good front three there. You know, you couldn't really beat it with many other teams. Maybe Man City and Liverpool, the only two who are maybe a bit stronger. But I think you're right. I think there's room to build there, and I think they've got a right to be excited about what the future could hold. Mm-hmm. In terms of Man United and Chelsea, like Sam said, they may be ahead of the game in this one. Do you expect either of those two to challenge the current top two for the title next season, Harry?
I would say Chelsea have obviously got one of the best front lines in the Premier League, if not world football, if they are able to bring Kai Havertz in. But the problem is they can't stop conceding goals, and you can score as many goals as you want, but if you don't keep them out at the back like they did this season, especially with a bit of a dodgy goalkeeper combined with the fact that their centre backs aren't solid whatsoever, you're going to lose the big games and you're going to lose the small games as well. You saw them beat Manchester City and Liverpool, then they've lost to Aston Villa and Brighton in this restart period. So they are still. I'm thinking about Arsenal, not Chelsea. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. They lost to Sheffield United. 3-0, and it's just that sort of they're not quite there because I think they're looking in the wrong places. With Manchester United, the Sancho deal is going to also be very good because they needed a right-sided attacking midfielder. But once again, their defence is still questionable. They probably still need a left-sided centre-back. They probably still need a good left-back. Maybe a defensive midfielder as well. I don't know why they've given Matic a 3-year deal. Maybe a 1 or 2 year, but not 3 years. And it's they need to invest in the right places to stand a chance. I think maybe not this season, but the season after that, I think they've got a good chance of pushing for the league.
I think as this season has drawn to a close, I think Chelsea's problems have been exposed more, and their weaknesses are more evident than United's, if I'm comparing the two. They conceded 18 more goals than United did, Chelsea, this season. So the defence, if Lampard, the pressure's going to be on him next season with him being able to make transfers. So it's going to be a real test for him. He needs to improve that defence, and maybe they could break into the top two, to answer your question. But it is so tough because Liverpool and Man City are just so dominant.
JJ, do you think part of the reason why Leicester need to strengthen, like we've already mentioned, is because of the fear that Man United and Chelsea might be starting to pull away?
Yeah, definitely, because we saw towards the end of the season, they excelled, and that might be due to their experience in the top four. They're used to it with like newcomers, but they're obviously strengthening. Chelsea's attack is going to be amazing, but obviously you've got the defensive issues. United stepped up, so if their front three can keep doing that, and they've got Fernandes, Pogba, it's way ahead of a lot of teams, well, pretty much every team in the league apart from the top two. Yeah, I don't know. We've definitely got to improve our squad if we want to compete. It's going to have to be improved a lot if we want to compete with that type of quality.
It's a shame, really, because that's where this imbalance in football debate comes in. Because realistically, Leicester can't compete financially with Manchester United and Chelsea. When problems arise for Man United and Chelsea, they can buy their way out of it. Where Leicester, it's a bit different. So
it's a bit disappointing that this year we ended up collapsing because it was a big opportunity.
Yeah.
But Chelsea not signing anyone, United were in a bit of turmoil until signed Fernandes. So it's kind of our chance, and now they've got a summer to recruit, and then you've obviously got the 5 subs, so they're going to have a lot more depth, a lot more players to bring on, and then we're going to struggle for money. We've obviously got the new training ground, which we put money on. So that took a bit out of our transfer budget. So they're going to have a lot more facilities and money to be able to work on that.
Yeah, so thank you again to Ollie, as I said, for sending that question in. We maybe haven't found a definitive answer, but it's been an interesting one to discuss for sure. As we always say every week, if you have a question such as that, which you'd like us to discuss, send it in. And as we've shown today, we will spend some time discussing it. It's time now to move on to the final part of the podcast. As always, the quiz. If you've all got a notepad there, I should have warned you, JJ, but I'm sure you've got one there to hand.
Yes, he knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing.
He's watched the show, I think.
We have now done 21 rounds of the quiz, dating back to when we used to do the radio show, and I can remember, JJ, you'd occasionally listen in on your train coming in or whatever it was and tell us that you did better than everyone else. So this week, JJ is stepping in Devon's place, and he's got a fight on his hands.
Needs the help, Devon.
Nigel Pearson, go on.
Interim manager for Devon.
Needs the help, bless him.
Let's see if he could do what Watford couldn't when they let Nigel Pearson go and claw Devon out of it. But the post-lockdown football in England, at least, is now over. So I thought we'll have a look back at the last 6 or 7 weeks, see how much you guys can remember. So the scores after 21 rounds: Sam on 61, Harry on 59, and Devon on 55. So we'll see how JJ can help him out. Question number 1. Okay, Norwich City conceded, collected the least points of any Premier League club post-lockdown. 0.
You can do it.
They also only scored once. Why have I written that down? So yeah, they were bottom of the post-lockdown table. But which team finished second bottom?
Ooh.
So when I say the post-lockdown table, you've probably all seen it. See if you can envisage it. Just the 9 games post-lockdown. Who collected the second least amount of points? And I can tell you they didn't get 0 points. No one's as useless as Norwich were. Yeah. all that talk I said. All that talk I said when we were previewing the start, saying we were going to beat Southampton first, and then I said, and Harry said, "No, you're not." Harry even said, "I'd take a draw," and then they.
I was tense. I must say, I was tense. I was expecting a fight. I don't know.
This isn't a good start.
This is. Do you want to write a different question, George, and then we can all go like.
Okay, I'm going to move on. You can think about it because we'll do all 5 as always, and then reveal the answers. Question number 2: in the first game of the Premier League restart, Aston Villa keeper Oyan Nyland carried the ball over the goal line, but the technology failed to spot it, and the game against Sheffield United ended 0-0. This, of course, had big implications at the end of the season. But what I'm asking for you for this ghost goal, who took the free kick for Sheffield?
Oh my goodness!
Which prompted the incident. So,
for goodness' sake,
was then carried over.
Surreal memories, Hester.
So which player was it? This incident, as of course, I think Bournemouth said they were thinking of pursuing legal action over it. I don't think anything has come of that in the end, but which player was it? Move on to question number 3. West Bromwich Albion finished second in the Championship, earning promotion back to the top flight. But how many league games did they win post-lockdown? I can tell you they were in second before the lockdown and they finished in second at the end. But how many league games did they win? They played 9.
Who was that? Sorry, I missed the team.
West Brom.
West Brom.
This one, I won't do a closest to for this one. I'll say you've got to get it bang on.
They played 9.
They played 9, yeah. Let me have a think about that one.
Educated guess.
Yeah. Can't wait for September and we'll get these on. If I can get it over my ear. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. Fine. I'll move on to question number 4. Against which 3 teams did Manchester City fail to keep a clean sheet against post-lockdown in the Premier League? So there were 3 teams. They collected 6 clean sheets from their 9, but which 3 teams did they not get a clean sheet against? I think Harry knows one of them. There's a clue.
George.
They all knew that one anyway.
Searching for one more.
Oh, you know. Oh, I don't know. I've only got one written down. Who else did they concede against? Is it no? Was it no?
And there are 3 points available for this one. It's an important question.
Got it.
I've lost the quiz.
I think I've got it. I've got 3 out of 3. Yeah.
Still having a think.
Or is it? Yeah.
I will move on to question number 5 now. And the question is, how many Premier League goals did Bruno Fernandes score post-lockdown? And for this one, it will be the closest to the answer earns a point. So how many goals?
A lot of penalties.
Yeah, a lot of talk about the number of penalties Man United had. They had a record number for a Premier League season. I think it was 14.
14, yeah.
Which is crazy, really.
A lot.
I was saying earlier this week, if there was a vote on whether to keep VAR or not, I think Man United would definitely be voting to keep it. But, that's the question. How many Premier League goals did he score? Let me know when you're ready to go, and we will mark those up.
Still trying to think of the Man City one.
Yeah.
That is maybe quite difficult, but I think
I've got it, which isn't good.
I think the fact that all of the football has been on TV means should maybe be doing well on this one, but maybe not.
It's in so many games.
Yeah, there really has been what game. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. Question number 1. We'll just get over this one quickly. Norwich had the least points. We all know that. In the post-lockdown table. But which team finished second bottom if we're looking at those 9 games in the post-lockdown table? I'll start with JJ, representing Devon.
Crystal Palace.
JJ
JJ's
Palace.
Yeah.
Harry?
That's a great shout. I put Bournemouth. That's a great shout.
You've both gone with Bournemouth.
Yeah, I went with Bournemouth as well.
And you could see by your reactions when JJ said Palace, you knew it was right.
They were terrible.
Devon, if he's watching, I'm sure he will be. He'll be celebrating in his front room once because it was Crystal Palace. They got 4 points. They beat Bournemouth in their first game back. And I actually did a report for UOD Footy Journos for their Liverpool game, saying how I thought they could qualify for Europe. That went well.
Mystic George.
They only collected 1 more point after that, but never mind. Question number 2. In the first game of the restart, the Villa-Sheffield United incident where the ball was carried over the line, the technology failed to spot it, and it ended 0-0. But which player took the free kick for Sheffield United, which prompted the incident? Sam, I'll ask you first.
I went Mr. Fleck.
Mr. John Fleck. Harry?
I went for another John, but I put John. Not six. The light. John Egan.
John Egan. And JJ, what did you go with?
I went for Ollie Norwood.
JJ went with Ollie Norwood. And if Devon got excited after the first question, then he'll be loving this one.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
indeed Ollie Norwood.
He's actually doing it.
Specialist.
He's actually clawing
We're
himself.
coming back.
He spoke into existence.
How much has he paid you to revise this, JJ? Question number 3. West Brom finished second in the Championship, earning promotion back to the Premier League. But how many of their post-lockdown league games did they win? So we're looking for a number. I'll start with Harry on this one, who has a liking for West Brom.
They might not like me after this because I only put 3. I really wasn't
Harry's
sure.
gone with 3. JJ, what have you said for this
4.
one?
I also went with 3.
Please don't be 4.
JJ went with 3 as well. And Sam?
I went 5.
Sam went with 5. I can tell you that they won away at Sheffield Wednesday. They beat Hull at home. They beat Derby at home. And that was it. That was the only 3.
Oh my God.
They
Let's
won,
go.
and they still sneaked promotion. They were all 3 in a row.
Thank God for this Man City question. Otherwise, I'll be
This is where it falls down for me. It falls down in.
I think I've got all 3. I might be wrong, but I think I've got all 3.
Question 4 was, against which 3 teams did Man City fail to keep a clean sheet against in their post-lockdown games? I will start with JJ on this one. Which 3 have you gone with?
Right. Well, Southampton. And then the other 2, I didn't have a clue. So I went Bournemouth, just in case they were getting battered and then Bournemouth scored.
Right.
And then Everton. Complete guess.
Okay. And I'll go to Sam next.
Saints, Bournemouth, Chelsea.
Sam's gone with Saints, Bournemouth, and Chelsea. And Harry?
That's exactly what I did as well. Saints, Chelsea, Bournemouth.
Okay. Let me hang on. 1, 2. I'm just making sure I counted those up properly. 1, 2. It was indeed Chelsea, Southampton, and Bournemouth.
I'll take 2.
So Ederson got 6 out of 9 clean sheets, which meant he just pipped Nick Pope to the Golden Glove Award. So that's 3 points for Sam, 3 for Harry, and 2 for JJ, wasn't it? Yeah. I'll just make it. I had a brain blank there. You probably noticed if you're watching, and if you're listening. Question number 5. How many Premier League goals did Bruno Fernandes score post-lockdown? The closest will earn a point for this one. I'll go to Harry first.
I think it's a bit too high. I put 7. I wasn't
Harry's
sure at
gone
all.
with 7. And Sam?
I went 6.
Sam went with 6.
I thought of like 4, but then
JJ?
I've gone lower. I've gone 4.
JJ's gone with 4. I have to tell you that Sam is absolutely bang on with 6, which means that's a crucial point.
That is crucial.
It means he doesn't lose any ground on Harry this week. JJ has closed the gap by 1. JJ is the winner of this week's quiz, so fair play on your guess.
And David.
So I guess
3 of Bruno Fernandes' goals were from the penalty spot. Let me just total these up for certain.
Fernandes.
Bruno.
Okay, so Sam on 65, Harry on 63, I believe. Yeah, and Devon on 60. So Devon's not out of it yet next week. I am considering doing a 10-question quiz for next week, given it's the final
it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Given it's the final one of this kind of series.
Make it exciting.
Let me know. If you're watching, you probably don't care, but if you'd rather not, if you think that would ruin the integrity, then let me know and we'll only do 5.
That's out of order, George. 5 questions.
For the purposes of fun, then we'll probably go with a 10-question quiz for that one. But that is the end of this week's episode. Thanks again to Jack, JJ, for stepping in. I'm sure if Devon's Wi-Fi fails him again, then he wouldn't mind you stepping in because you've essentially helped him out there. Next week, as we said, episode 16, we'll finish off the quiz. It'll be a bit of a different one as well. We'll have kind of an end of season overview, maybe a few awards in there too. And then that'll be the end of Series 1, and we will begin Series 2 when we are back at university in Derby at some point. But as I said, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week. See you later.
Bye.